we have a quorum here. So I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the Nantucket Historical Commission. We're meeting for our regular April meeting. Happy spring, everybody. Happy Easter, happy Passover. And I'm going to go around and make sure that everybody can hear me. And I'm also going to note that the meeting is being recorded. And so please be aware that anything that you display could be shared because the meeting will be available on the town YouTube website later. So let's call attendance. We have Commissioner Clement Durkees.
Yes, here. I can hear you.
Hi, Clement. Alternate Commissioner Susan Handy.
Yep, here.
We have our staff liaison, Holly Backus.
Good morning.
Good morning, Holly. Commissioner Mickey Rowland.
Here.
Hi, Mickey. Commissioner Angus McLeod.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Angus. Commissioner Tom Montgomery.
Here.
And our secretary, David Silver.
Hi, good morning.
Hi. And Commissioner Georgia Raisman.
Here.
Hi. And I see we also have our liaison to the select board, Dawn Hill Holgate. Hi, Dawn.
Morning.
Hi, good morning. So nice to
about 10:45.
Okay, great to have you. Yeah, and I'll also note today, unfortunately, I'm going to have to depart the meeting at around 11:20, and Angus will take over for me if we're still going at that point. So let's get started. It looks like we don't have anyone here who wants to make a public comment. The packet included the minutes of January 21st and March 18th. Did everyone have a chance to look through those minutes? Any comments on the minutes or discussion on the minutes? No. Motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Tom. Great. Okay, and do a roll call vote to approve both sets of minutes. Clement?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Mickey?
Yes.
Angus?
Hi.
Tom?
Yes.
Georgia?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
And I'm also an aye. Great. So the minutes are approved. Okay, membership and appointments. I'm not sure if Barbara White is joining us today, but I did want to announce that she will need to be resigning as an alternate commissioner. She's going to hand in her resignation in May. She will continue to volunteer on the projects that she's working on. Her projects are the assisting Holly and our commission with the community-wide survey of historic resources. And she's also helping with an item on our current work plan, which is evaluating and assessing the need for historic records archive. So she's going to continue working on that, which is terrific. She also recommended someone to come and hang out with us as an additional volunteer, and he might be dialing in at some point during our meeting, which would be great. That's George Butterworth. And we don't expect to fill this position because hopefully we've requested and the select board has supported that alternates are not really necessary, and we're actually not part of our original formation, as we discovered. So hopefully we'll see Barbara on the call, but I just wanted to announce that. And then we have a cycle of appointments that's going to happen soon. And that just is what it is. So we can talk about that later. I haven't really prepared any remarks about that. Does anybody else have any questions or comments about membership?
My question would be, does Barbara want to be a not an alternate, but a full member of the commission, or?
No, she is
No.
resigning because she's overcommitted.
Okay.
She has
I
big
understand.
projects with the NHA. Yeah. So
No, I know she does. I just was wondering. 'Cause she's
right.
a good commissioner.
No, I mean, I'm sure, I wish she were here to say what she said to me, but she's been very happy with, her service. It's just, she can't do everything. So she's going to focus just on the projects that she's working on and not come
Excellent.
to all the
Thank you.
meetings. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Holly now for the update on our survey.
Good morning, everybody. So the last couple weeks have blended in for me. Pal was here, both Ginny and Aaron and Devin were here. And they went so Aaron and Devin are in charge of the pilot survey for the fish lots. And leading up to that, I don't know if anybody noticed, there was a news flash announcement from town, basically letting people know if you see some architectural historians walking down the fish lots taking photos, this is what they're doing. And I actually received feedback from some folks willing to actually show them their house inside and out, which was really nice. And I was able to connect people with them. So that was great. They actually were able to go through quite a bit of the list of 100. I think the first day, I didn't get to see them on Monday, but the first day they were able to do about 30, then they did 50. So I haven't found out exactly the full count, but I'm pretty sure that they were able to do all of them because they were here until Friday. And then because of the weather, they had to leave later than they were expected to. So, and then on Wednesday, shout out to Nantucket Preservation Trust. Mary Bergman spent about 2 hours with them talking about, basically just how what Nantucket from a preservation perspective and some basically information on, the survey plan. So I think that was really informative. It sounded like Jenny and her team were really happy to spend that time. And of course, I gave my appreciation to Mary, as always, for her doing that and providing some additional information for them. So I think we're doing good. And actually, look forward to the next steps on that. I kind of want to, if it's okay with you, Madam Chair, to segue into their discussion that we had about the additional funding that we have from this fiscal year. As you all are aware, that we went through basically $50,000 was requested through town meeting. And this whole grant project is a $45,000 project. So we have an additional $5,000 funding as the fiscal year ends June 30th. We need to allocate that additional $5,000. So we had discussed on how we were going to do that. I've actually talked to Ginny on that. I am waiting for her feedback. She's really excited, engaged. And thank you, Mickey, for your email on those lists. I will, I actually have compiled a lot more to it. And I've actually sent it off to Ginny. So I think that's going to be helpful. So basically at the end of the day, she's going to help me extend the scope and make sure that obviously it's satisfied by our finance department, but I got the green light from finance and town admin to move forward with utilizing that additional $5,000, which is great. So that's for this fiscal year. And
Holly, sorry,
yeah.
can I pause on that?
Yes,
This was
absolutely.
all really a surprise. I had no idea that you'd arranged. And I had the expectation that this commission would have some say in how that additional funds would be spent and what would be a priority to survey. So what exactly what is happening?
You were copied on the email from Mickey to me about the town-owned properties.
Yes.
Yes. So that was the discussion from the last meeting about utilizing that additional funding that we have, not this new fiscal, but the current fiscal, to extend their existing scope that they have.
Okay.
And of course,
so
one thing I mentioned to the commission was, one, I need to make sure that finance and town admin are okay with us moving forward with extending the existing scope. And two, that our consultant is okay with that. I didn't want to assume.
yeah.
So again, I had to have that dialogue with Ginny on saying, hey, this is what we're wanting to do. Is this something that you all, is PAL interested? Do they have the time to be able to do this? Sorry, my phone is ringing. So nothing new. I hope that's
No, I
clear.
understand. I just
Okay.
wanted to be clear. I mean, I know that's what we approved, but I didn't know that I was unaware of the communications that you're briefing everybody on about
Okay.
actually being able to do it. So am I hearing that PAL has agreed that they will be able to survey additional structures?
So they're actually going to be looking at it. It would be for the town owned and federally owned structures to include within the overall plan. Ginny was very happy and ecstatic to be able to have the opportunity to add additional, I guess, work onto this project. And I wanted to get her, I wanted to get her feedback. Here we, again, at the end of the day, we've got this additional funding. What can we do between now? We need to allocate, obviously, that funding before June 30th. Yeah. I explained that, the commission is really looking forward to being able to utilize it because it's a use it or lose it. And I kind of, again, really wanted feedback from her. What exactly would this be? What would she see utilized on? Not to be able to, we need to keep it within the scope. That was the direction that I received from town admin and finance, So would we be able to utilize it for looking at the town owned properties and incorporate it within the overall survey plan, which they're working on? And again, I've left it with her. She's going to provide a draft scope, and we'll go from there. So I'm hoping that was okay. It sounded like that was what the discussion was before. I wasn't sure if this was something that they wanted to add on to the existing stuff that's going on now, for instance, the pilot or the plan. That it's not timeliness is an issue on that, but it sounded like from my preliminary 20-minute conversation I had with Jenny on the phone that this was the way that she'd want to go. So she was going to touch base with me hopefully soon in a proposed scope. So that was my whole thing I wanted to bring up to the commission.
Mickey, I know you were working on this too. Did you want to share anything? Oh, we can't hear you.
I'm happy to hear that it's gone as far as it has, and it sounds like it's going just the way we wanted it to. I wasn't aware of Holly's efforts, so I had been trying to contact the procurement office and getting no results. So I'm glad that it's already progressed as far as it has. So all good with me.
And thank you, Mickey. I'm sorry, as you probably all are aware, days are really long and hours are very sensitive, so I just went with your list. I piled a whole bunch of information on it. I gave the list of the HDC surveys here for the benefit of the commission. I will share what I sent to Ginny. I elaborated, see that? Zoom out a little bit. So I elaborated more on the list that you provided. There's a method to my color schemes going on in here, but all the HDC surveys that we have on file is all this information. These are ones I need to find whether or not we have them here in house at Plus. CC Trump Pump Station was something that I added on, Mickey. So I added a little bit more. I've got all the Brant Point information, all the HDC surveys for the Coast Guard down there, included even Great Point. And I even included our state forest because, again, we're also incorporating from the overall survey plan our cemeteries. So obviously that's something to include. So basically this list compiles of anything that is town or federally owned. I will notate that there's a couple in here that are privately owned. For instance, obviously St. Kitty Headlight is owned and maintained by Sconset Trust. But
yeah,
everything else.
Great Point is owned by the Coast Guard, as far as I'm aware.
Yes, I indicated privately owned. I really couldn't. It was really hard for me from the property card perspective to see who the ownership was, and obviously notating that it. I remember when I was 2 when it fell over.
Yeah.
So it's not listed. But anyway, here is the list. I've sent this again. I sent this to Jenny. I am hoping that I get something from her soon, because again, need to work on that updated scope. It's not as easy as just writing something. There we go. But she's going to help me with that. Again, this is the direction I was assuming that the commission wants to go, and I hope you all are okay and satisfied with that.
Holly, I think it's wonderful that you put that list together, and thank you for doing it. I had no idea that you had done it. I know we talked about it, but I didn't know you'd found the time to do it. So that's terrific.
Time is of the essence, and we want to get that
yeah.
moving. So
That's right. So can you share your communications with Jenny, with Mickey, who was your collaborator on this?
sure, absolutely.
I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah.
And the thing is to have a plan B, because we don't know if it can be attached to the scope of work. So I think we also have to keep in our mind, well, what if the answer comes back, sorry, it can't be attached to the scope, because that's not really in our control. Like, someone's going to make that determination and it's not us. So I just think it might be good to have a plan.
On that note, because again, I've received direction from town admin through the finance department that it has to be in a continuation in order to continue the same scope and same consultant. We need to have the additional scope to be in the same lines. So that's really truly why it was important for me to have literally a 20-minute conversation with Jenny and say, hey, this is what the story is. From a consultant's perspective, how can this be achieved? Because again, at the end of the day, from procurement's perspective, we need to show that this funding is going to be utilized by that date, or at least, shown it's going to be utilized and it doesn't go back in. So I kind of really said, this is what we were thinking about doing. I didn't know if we could utilize it with the existing stuff that's going on, or if this is, so again, the ball I've pretty much put is in Jenny's court as our consultant, because again, at the end of the day, she's the only one that can tell us what she can utilize it for. And she understands that as long as it's along with the existing scope in lines of that, it's not going to something else, it should work. And it sounds like it will, because it's part of the overall plan, not for individual surveys, if that makes any sense. So I don't think we need a plan B. I think we just need to wait on her proposed scope, and I will work with procurement on moving that forward.
Okay. That sounds good. Well, that's reassuring. And yeah, I look forward to getting more details. Thank you, Holly, for that update. Does anybody have any other questions? We still need to look at the map, which I'm going to share.
Hillary, while you're pulling up the map, I just have a hopefully not a bad question. Did everything in the fish lots get surveyed that we needed surveyed? So there wasn't any room to expand that?
When I had this conversation, this is another reason why I wanted to have a conversation with Jenny, and I'm glad she was really up for it. She even was on the road when she told me to give her a call. And she said, because the fact that they're not planning on coming back to the island for this particular project again, and they spent the time here, there is no room to add additional properties to that. That was a question that I had. But when I brought up the idea of this, she was really happy about that.
So these, unlike the other things in the fish lots, wouldn't require another trip back? Is
my understanding it wouldn't, because it'd be part of the overall plan project.
Okay. I'm just trying to get this. Can everybody see the map?
Yes.
Okay. So we want to sign off on this. Holly, do you want to describe what we need to do here?
Yeah, so this is the areas of our survey plan, our little group, Tom, Angus, Barbara, myself, and I will note Hillary started in the beginning. We have been meeting on our own, as well as meeting, did I forget anybody? I didn't forget anybody in that list, did I? Sorry if I have. And meeting on our own, and then also meeting with PAL via Zoom to go over these areas. These are the areas that are going to be expanded upon in those phased, multiple yeared process. So this is for the plan itself. Really the steps that I know PAL are working on right now, and I'll be sending them additional information, but is taking the list of those areas that they gave us, as well as the information that you all provided to them previously, and the refined list, which is also in the packet, and compiling all of that to really give more of a description. As you all are well aware, Nantucket didn't evolve, it evolved organically. So there really isn't that much of a rigid subdivisions, if you will, until you go farther out, obviously, of the core district. And even those, compile of multiple areas, for instance, Surfside, Airport, and all that. But my goal is to provide, and I just haven't finished that, a list of all the roads for each individual section that will help within the area plan itself. Because again, the goal is to be able, like we're planning on with this next fiscal grant, taking part of the Brant Point after we're done with the fish lots, go to the Brant Point area. And then hopefully the next fiscal year we can decide on what's the next area on the island that we want to have surveyed. So again, this is going to be a piecemeal process, but this is the formation, if you will, of the overall plan. And some areas you'll probably say, well, wait a minute, that also includes, for instance, we know where the Richard Gardner Crooked Record is. That kind of takes over a couple of areas. We also know how West Monomoy was laid out in 1726, Fish Lot 1717. Then you've got the Wesco Acre lots. I think it was also 1726. So you've got a lot of these areas that were platted out in certain timeframes, but we kind of also wanted to make it so it was more achievable. Lily Pond, Sunset Hill area. If anybody from the subcommittee wanted to jump in, please do. But yeah, this is it.
I'm on the subcommittee, and we'd located through other eyes, not just the subcommittee. I think Angus had the sharpest eyes, and we located 3 or 4 areas that we as the committee had missed labeling, and we fixed that. And I got the sense that at the last meeting, when Pal was there, it was just the committee they sent down, myself and Holly. But by the time the meeting was over, and we studied this map in 3 or 4 different configurations, meaning they'd done it a number of different ways. We were pretty happy with what we got when we fixed a couple of things that right then and there we thought wasn't right or there was confusion about, and they were good to go with it. And going back to what we were talking about a minute ago about the fish lots, to Angus's question, the day we met, it was a beautiful day, but it was supposed to be lousy. That was a Tuesday. On Wednesday, Thursday, and iffy on Friday. But they were determined. They brought their raincoats and their rain gear, and they went out, and fortunately the weather didn't turn out as bad as they predicted, so they got it done.
Excellent.
Great.
I did want to point out, you'll see on here where it says Lowy Orange Street. That's been brought to their attention. They will fix that and put the R on there.
The only other question they had for us, I think, was 46 and 48 Fair Street, which is a side-by-side duplex. And we told them, they wanted to know whether we wanted them to do it as 1 or 2 buildings. We told them to do as 1 or 2, whatever.
2, I think 1 for each. Yep.
Yeah, 1 for each.
Which is exactly how they're handling the Folger block on Orange Street, which was also Habs documented a long time ago as well. So.
I'm just looking at this detail, this little line here that extends into Madison Valley. Is that like the one road that had to be sucked into Airport?
Don't know, but I will shoot Ginny and Melissa an email on that. Thank you for bringing that. I didn't see it.
And then here there's this neighborhood here that doesn't have a label.
Oh,
I
yep,
assumed
okay.
that was part of Pulpus.
I
Right.
think that, yes.
Oh, I see. So this is catching some, I mean, yeah. So
That's
so
one of the
basically they're
areas that
drawing
we
it
fixed, you know,
along
yeah,
the roads.
we fixed that.
Oh, okay. I think, does anybody want to make a motion to approve this map with these couple edits that Holly's going to chase down?
Can I just make one quick comment?
Yeah,
And it's not, I don't want to hold this up or anything, but I'm just curious is Sconset covers a lot of ground. And I'm just curious, was there any discussion about breaking that into different areas, like Sankaty or Low Beach or anything?
I think what you're seeing there, what you're talking about, Maggie, is what you're seeing in that huge area. A lot of that is undeveloped land. It's rolling hills and everything else. What you're talking about is more or less Tom Nevers, or not really Tom Nevers, but at the elbow there, and Sconset in general in itself, and along the bluff. But the rest of it is moors. And so it looks much worse than it is, I think.
I think it's a good question, though. I mean, we've gotten so detailed in town. Maybe we should, is it worth having a separate study for Old Sconset?
May I chime in?
Yes, Clement.
The Sconset Trust has commissioned Michael May to do a neighborhood by neighborhood description of the history of the neighborhoods and the architecture that's predominant in all of the neighborhoods. I believe we've identified 6 or 7 neighborhoods that he is addressing: Codfish Park, Baxter Road, Main Street, Sunset Hills. So that is in the process. It is not finished yet. It will not cover specific buildings. I mean, he will highlight specific buildings in each area, but it will not be a building by building full fleshed out, survey. And that actually, those contours are the official map that the Sconset Advisory Board uses and the HDC uses when identifying reconstructions and rehabbing and new buildings. And so that is actually kind of the official Sconset map, that
The area plan.
area plan. Yeah. So I'm happy with the map. I know that there are a lot of different segments to that map, but I think perhaps it should all stay together.
On that,
Clement, could I offer something? I'm just wondering whether or not, to answer Mickey's question, if everybody would be happy with splitting it up to the carrying the Sconset Road right out to the end of the map, and everything to the south of that would be one area, and then dividing anything that went from there down the Pulpus Road to the east of that being another area, and to the west of that being a third area. So you're dividing Sconset up into roughly three
parts.
areas.
Well, that's a good idea. I mean, I can send you the map that Michael May has come up with for his various districts, but
That
which
way
might
it
be
covers
helpful. I
most
mean,
of
if
the
you,
housing. If you carry out the Sconset Road and everything south, that takes care of a huge amount of homes there. And if you run down the Pulpus Road and everything to the east of that, that takes care of 95% of the houses along there. And there are a few new ones that are coming along there in that whole huge area that's to the west of the Pulpus Road. And I think that does it. I mean, just for a generalization.
yeah, I mean, I think you're right, unless you want to make it as detailed as the downtown, and then it could be split into even more sections.
Yeah, and that way you can section out those areas. But generally speaking, for this map, you've got 3 more spots, but that's just an idea.
Can I suggest, I'm really glad you brought this up, Mickey, and asked this question, because obviously there's a lot here. I think it's useful to have details, because then when we bid out these neighborhoods, we can have all the detail and decide to consolidate as opposed to, start too high and maybe miss some of the detail. That's just the way I think about it. But I'm wondering if maybe the best thing is to approve the map with the understanding that Holly will work with this committee to decide if they want to do something further with Sconset.
So as
I'm
not to
okay with
hold it
that.
up. Yeah, I'm fine with that too.
And I'll
May I
provide the-
ask? Yes,
Yeah,
Clement,
Holly.
I was going to ask, is that something that Sconset Trust would be willing to share with us
Yes,
on
ma'am.
how? Awesome. That would be
I will get it
fantastic.
to you next week. I'm not there now, but I can certainly get it to you.
Perfect. And,
Yeah.
and on
I've
that
got it
note,
somewhere I've got it somewhere, but I'm not sure where right now.
on that note, I did want to bring up, so when we did meet one of the first times with PAL, was because of the recognizance survey that was done back in '89. There were some neighborhoods that are in Macris that were not listed in the list that you all gave to PAL. And that included those individual spots of Sankaty Head, Plainfield, Low Beach. And so there was that was brought to my attention. These are areas that are not on NHC's list, but they don't necessarily have to be. So I think, quite frankly, because that information is available with Macris, with the state, but with Michael May's work through the Sconset Trust, maybe it'd be beneficial for Sconset again, we're going to be flushing all this down the road, but kind of compiling that within the survey plan and say, hey, this area of Sconset actually is delineated neighborhoods, and maybe we could, as a commission, maybe you all would follow with what Sconset Trust is working on with Michael May. Just a thought.
Well, for example, we do not identify Plainfield or, Low
Yeah.
Beach. This is all more of what is considered historic in these districts. So,
And maybe it's a
Yeah.
combination of the two, but
Yeah.
good stuff though.
A combination, just to identify more areas that you maybe could include in a survey or not, but you make the decision after you know which area is which. So yeah, I will get the map to Holly, and maybe this could be an addendum to this particular map, and we work from that. That would be good.
That sounds good. I mean, I think if we leave it in Holly's hands, she'll be sure to communicate with Ginny and get them what they need so we can keep this project moving forward. Tom?
Awesome.
Make a motion that we accept this map as submitted with the understanding that Holly will make some additions to it.
I'd like to second that motion.
Thank you.
Okay, Clement,
Aye.
Mickey,
Aye.
Tom,
Aye.
Susan,
Aye.
Angus,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Georgia,
Aye.
and we have Barbara here now. Barbara, would you like to give an opinion on this?
Yeah, I think it's been an interesting process. I think we did a good job. I think it's a great motion, and if I could vote, I would vote on it.
Great, and I'm also an aye. All right, thank you, everybody. We'll also eventually need to start talking about the 2022-2023 grant, but maybe we can do that at our next meeting, unless there was anything burning that you needed to bring up, Holly.
Nope, the only
No.
thing is I did send the formal, which I believe I copied you on,
Mhm.
the formal acceptance to MHC to say thank you. And yes, we want to move forward with that. I believe between now and the end of this month, I should be contacted to start the coordinators meeting for that next fiscal year. So yeah, good stuff. Very
That's
excited.
fantastic. Great, everybody. Okay, so we're going to move on to our next topic, but I did want to let everyone know, Barbara, sorry, I did share your news since it was at the beginning of the agenda, that you'd be handing in your resignation in May. And just so happy that you're going to continue working on these special projects. Did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I feel badly about this. I feel quite guilty. I've never quit anything really. but I thought that I've been overwhelmed lately with some of the work I'm doing with the NHA and on some other things. And I just felt like I wasn't giving it the time that it really needs. And I found it very fascinating. I feel like I learned more than I was able to contribute. And I thought that this was the right time because alternates are going to be discontinued and I would be a full board member. And I feel like this was the right time to make the decision. But I would like to stay on at least one of the subcommittees as a volunteer, the way Betsy is sometimes called. So I really appreciate I've gotten to know people I didn't know before, and I will feel sad, but also it's the right decision. So thank you anyway.
Barbara, it's been so great having you with
Barbara.
us. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so we'll be able to celebrate Barbara over when we meet in person, I'm sure. So the next thing that we want to talk about is, hang on, let me just get this smaller so I can move it around. We have Gull Island, which is not in order in the packet. So we are trying out our process here that we approved, where just to keep everything organized and consistent, the project owner has filled out this repeat application, so we know all the basic facts about this. She submitted it along with these comments that she received from the MHC, which is helpful to us because it helps us learn about this tax credit program. It helps us understand what the MHC looks for. And that helps us guide future applicants, and it helps us support applicants or understand, what some of the concerns our partners have in preservation about certain applications. So in this case, what the MHC is looking for, and the MHC is giving these comments to the Park Service. So we're all working as partners, federal, state, and local historical commissions and Park Service. So they're just looking for more information about the existing condition and the proposed treatment. Epsilon is the consultant here. Epsilon prepared the part 2. And I'm not going to read all of this. I'll assume that you've read it. But they don't have a problem with, they're not complaining about the plan. They're saying we need more information about the plan. And more information about how the Secretary of the Interior's technical standards for historic rehabilitation will be met. So Sarah is going to be addressing this with her consultant. I haven't spoken with Sarah, but I assume the consultant will be addressing it because Sarah has asked us for a letter of support so that she can submit her application to the MHC for their April 30th deadline. We supported this project in the past. We wrote a letter of support twice because there's tremendous community benefit in getting this deteriorating house back into a habitable state. And we felt that the approach the applicant was taking was consistent with preservation. So any questions?
I don't have a question, but just as a neighbor of that building, it still looks bleak over there just because it's going at a snail's pace with all this that we're reading about. But I will say that they've got a new brick foundation going around the building, and it's starting to look a little, like it's coming out of the ground a bit. So it looks good. They're taking their time, and I'm very hopeful that this process goes well for Sarah.
Yeah, I'll just say that I was pleased in reading all of that from the MHC that now we know kind of what documentation they want from the beginning, because I thought all the photographs that they had of Six Gull were substantial, but they want even more details. I think so. Just so you know, going forward, if you're applying for this, you really need to document the details and how you plan to finish them. Yeah.
Holly?
Yep, I just wanted to add that I think Sarah's actually been dealing with some family concerns, so that's why it's taken a little bit long. But the biggest thing on Clement's point, the information provided of really understanding where MHC is coming from, I think is obviously very, very helpful. But at the same time, looking at the fact that this poor structure was sitting there just basically rotting before Sarah took it over, and the other alternative could have been complete demolition. So it's again, I've been publicly, before even the HDC's reviews, to applaud Sarah and her preservation efforts on the structure to save it. And so it's but on that note too, it's also nice to see specifically the comments and concerns that MHC has. So
Georgia, you had a hand up?
No, I was interested in the MHC's comment about the distinction between replacement and rehabilitation. And they said the widespread removal of historic fabric may not meet the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation, but of course that's their issue. That's not our issue. I mean, their issue is whether they get the tax credit in the form that they want it. But it's interesting that the MHC is keeping their eye on this.
Yeah, I had the same reaction.
It's an interesting point. It doesn't
I
concern
had the same reaction, and it made me think that when we get into these structures that have had so much loss through deterioration and the lack of proper maintenance, it's really hard to bring them back in a way that's consistent, because to meet the Secretary of the Interior standards, which is a requirement of this tax credit program, which has the potential to rebate significant funds to project owners, it has to be in kind. So you have to do plaster and lath, and you can't just put any brick, you have to find brick that is right and that matches. And it's a real challenge. And I think, we saw all the photographs, but unless you're really a technical materials expert, it's as they are, and as the people that they employ are, it's very difficult. So it makes me even more resolved that we really need to advise that folks have consultants to work with. We are not the reviewers. And as Georgia, as you said, it's her job to get the information they need, and it's our job to encourage her to do that, because that will be a successful project that will be approved.
But I agree with Holly. It's wonderful to see this building coming back. It's just what a relief to see something favorable happening to it finally.
The other thing that was interesting to me in the part 2 materials that were included in the packet was the example of what it takes to enforce the minimum maintenance bylaw. And part of the reason why this is so expensive for Sarah and so difficult is because so much was lost, because it went unattended to and unmaintained for so many years. And, I'd never seen, I know how to complain about minimum maintenance, but I'd never actually seen the whole process, and the town council got involved. So that was sort of interesting trove of publicly available documents on a matter that is also of interest to us. Okay, so what we've done in the past is that Angus and I have worked with Holly to prepare a letter. Nothing has changed about this application, so I imagine the letter would be pretty similar to something that we've done in the past. I would like to write a new letter because I think we've learned so much in the past year about these projects and know better how to support them, the ones that we support. Would anyone like to offer any specific advice or guidance about the letter or a motion regarding support or lack of support for this project? Commissioners, let's go around the room. Holly or Clement? Clement, you have big. Clement is up.
I'm sorry. I jumped
No,
in.
Clement, I'm calling on you. I'm calling on you.
Thank you. I have great support for this project. I think it's wonderful. She's, the other thing that they were requesting that she hire a structural engineer and a historic materials consultant. And I think going forward, we can suggest to other projects that come before us that they think about that. Of course, it adds cost to the project, but it seems like that is what MHC is asking for. So I'm very supportive of this project, and I think we can write you and Angus, whatever letter you write will be okay with me.
Okay.
So
So
I
Clement, is
approve the
that
bill.
is that a
I
motion
approve
then
your
to write a
future
letter?
letter.
of support?
Yeah,
Okay.
let's so move that whatever letter Angus and Hillary write will be in support of phase 2 of 6 goal will we approve.
Okay.
Seconded.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, Mickey,
Yes.
Angus,
Aye.
Tom,
Yes.
David,
Aye.
Georgia,
Aye.
Clement, you're in favor of your motion,
Yes, ma'am.
and I am also in favor. And Susan and Barbara, did you as alternates have any comments? You guys are thumbs up. Okay, great. Okay, thank you, everybody. We'll get right on that so that Sarah makes her April 30th deadline. Oh, any comments about our process with the form, the way we're doing this? It's the first time we've kind of implemented. Holly, was it good from your perspective?
Yes, I think it's very, very helpful. It's a checklist. That way we're not having to go back and forth. And I wanted to mention, and I mentioned it to you, my goal is to have this on the website soon. I just haven't had reached out to Florencia yet, but I'm going to ask her to put this on the website, and maybe even work on a page specifically for historic tax credits, but want to have it available so that way these folks from all these different consultants like Epsilon and PAL and whatnot, there's a lot in actually New England, will know exactly what Nantucket's looking for. So thank
That's
you.
great. You know, we might even have kind of a meet and greet with some of these consultants so they can come and tell us about their services, and then we can put a list. I mean, I don't think we would like, sorry, Tom?
I think that is a fantastic idea.
Okay, meet and greet with consultants. I mean, I don't think we would recommend one or the other, but it would be nice to have their resources,
Right.
and for us to be aware.
I
Okay.
think it's just been really helpful to have a consolidated checklist. It's bringing more information to us as we review these applications. And it brought more information specifically in this application to us. And just for the record, I'm so excited about all the work that's going on at 6 Goal. And I'm excited to see that move forward. It is, out of all the applications we've seen, it seems like there's been more documentation on this than any other, but it's interesting to see that it's still not quite what SHPO is looking for. So
Yeah.
all that's helpful information, and we just keep learning more. But I think this was a useful tool to have our own form checklist.
Great. Terrific. Thank you, everybody. Okay, work projects. So surveys of town-owned historic resources, which is Mickey and Holly. We kind of got a briefing on that already. I'm going to summarize where I think we stand with that. Holly has put together a list of town-owned historic resources, which is expanded, an expanded and comprehensive list. And Holly, can you email that around to the commissioners? Great. And she's spoken with our consultant and is pursuing the idea that surveys of these resources would be appended to the current scope of work with PAL. And Ginny was optimistic that that could be done, and she's working on that. And Brian Turbot, our finance director, is okay with releasing the additional up to $5,000 as long as Ginny feels she can, expand the scope of work. Is that right?
You got it.
That's
Perfect.
fantastic. And Mickey, I'm sure you and Holly will have follow-up discussions to move it along. Okay, great. Statement of need for revolving loan fund. David and Georgia.
I can start with that a little bit, if that's okay, David.
Yes.
David did a great survey of need. Actually, maybe David could start. He did a quick survey of existing properties that might conceivably be in the category of entities needing to use a revolving loan fund for the purpose of repairs. And then I just reviewed an existing revolving loan fund in the town of Arlington. Thank you, Hillary, for sending that along. So David, why don't you summarize what you found first?
Yeah, I'm wondering, Hillary, do you have the second sheet of that data set that could be shareable, or do you want me to just talk about figures and explain?
So the sheet that the information that I have had information, I don't think we would, I mean, it's
Page
public
2.
information,
Page
but
2.
I'm
there's
looking at sheet 2
Yeah.
and I don't have anything on my sheet 2. It's blank.
look at rows D through H, 6 and 7.
Oh, that's yeah, I don't, my sheet 2 is completely blank. There's nothing on it.
Bizarre.
That's why I was a
Well,
little
that's okay.
confused.
It's really three numbers that we're talking.
Maybe you could just talk about it,
That's
David, and if you need me to share something, you can email it to
Okay.
me.
So what I did is I went into, essentially did all the town property cards for every historic structure in the ROH district. So what I did was I filtered out those results by properties that hadn't sold in the last 10 years. So a lot of the information I have is heavily hinging on the accuracy of the assessor's data and the property card, which, as we know, can be a little imperfect. So some of these figures, could be skewed one way or the other. But what we found was that there are 280 properties at least that are historic pre-1975 and also hadn't sold in the last 20 years, so pre-2012. So essentially it was a needs assessment. So we were trying to figure out and gauge what, the market for, a bank coming in and doing this revolving loan fund would look like, how many homes, how many owners could potentially be eligible. So I think that, if you splice the data, you've got homeowners with folks like Hillary who have their home on Main Street and it's maintained, and then you maybe have someone who isn't capable of maintaining the home that has owned the property for that length of time. So there's two, I think, different types of homeowners, ones that are maintaining them and others that aren't. So I think the next step, as far as the data is concerned, would be to kind of go through and kind of fine tune this list to get it from 280, down to, I think, a more realistic target. Because I know certainly that not all 280 homes are in need of a loan fund. So that's what the data suggests. That the couple other key points that the data had was, let me just pull it up. Average year built of those 280 homes was 1868, and the average last sale for those homes was 1993. So almost 20 years. And I will let Georgia pick up with some of the research that she did, but if you guys do have any questions, please let me know.
David, thank you for doing all of that work. That's a lot of sifting through.
Yeah.
And just to remind everybody, I mean, what we're trying to get at is sort of to use a business term, like a total available market size of how many people would potentially benefit from this kind of a loan fund. And those are people who own a historic structure according to our definition of historic, and might appreciate some low interest financing, easy to access, small loans, low interest. So in other words, folks that maybe are on a fixed income and they have the money, they just don't have the money all now. So we're looking at a universe, and the proxy for that was homes, as David said, that hadn't sold in a long time. So we're looking at a universe of 280 just in town. And of course we have historic structures all through the island. Georgia?
Yeah, I want to make sure I wasn't mute. Hillary sent me some notes, a video actually presented by the Arlington, Massachusetts Preservation Fund, which cooperatively made a preservation a year or two ago about how its fund worked, and which was very interesting. It's been in operation for about 40 years. It started, interestingly enough, with a town planning director who was deeply involved and engaged in the idea of historic preservation and maintaining the historic character of the town. He got together with a number of local citizens who were equally passionate about historic preservation, and together they came up with this idea of creating a fund that local homeowners could use to repair the exteriors of their property. Exteriors were picked because they wanted this to be something that would be a public benefit. So something that could be seen from the road rather than something you could use inside your house. They went for a revolving fund in the amount of $100,000, a pretty small amount, but over 40 years they've loaned $1.2 million to, I think, a total of 108 different loan applicants. They charge interest at half of the prime rate. Their average loan their largest loan was $79,000. And I think their average loan was somewhat less than half of that, maybe even less than that. They have a board that consists of representatives of the real estate industry, the historic district and historical commission, and historical society, and the community development planning person. What they do is applicants make an application showing their own employment record, their credit record. They do a credit check through the local bank, and they make a small loan, which is then paid over usually a typical amount of 10 years. They take a mortgage amount in that period of time, and they take a preservation easement for twice the length of time of the loan. So if you get a loan for 10 years to fix the trim on your windows, for example, you give the preservation fund a historic preservation easement for 20 years. They haven't had any defaults, which is nice to know. And generally, they quote their purposes as being for the restoration of an existing feature or the reconstruction of a missing feature. The missing historic feature has to be well documented. So if somebody wanted to create a porch, they have to show evidence from the historic record that porch was originally there. They have guidelines, public guidelines, which are tied into their town's stated master plan for retaining the historic character of the town. And they felt that they needed a very wide constituency to get started, rather than just their grassroots enthusiasts and their town planner. They got a lot of buy-in from the two historic commissions from local cultural institutions that were concerned with maintaining the historic character of the town. So on balance, it was a very good presentation to give us an idea of what we would need to do in order to create such a fund. They also got their funding. They got their funding through a federal HUD fund called the Community Development Block Grant. I don't know if those grants are still available, Holly would know, but that was one source.
Yeah, we're not a CDBG community, so we'd have to find some other source, but.
Right. But that was the way they did, and accordingly they planned their guidelines in accordance with what that grant required them to do. We would do guidelines according to whatever our plan did. Yes, Tom.
We did that at the Coffin School, and it has worked extremely well. Exactly what you're talking about.
What was your funding source? Was it
the CPC was our funding source, but we had to go through the MPC and the town, and because it went before town meeting to appropriate the funds. But we borrowed, or we didn't borrow. We used, I don't know, there's over $500,000 worth of funds to put the exterior of the Coffin School back in order, and we've done it, and it's worked very, very well.
It's beautiful.
We did that through, I think, Michael May at the time, who was the director, and Brian Pfeiffer.
And well, I learned also too that it's Somerville, Cambridge, Brookline, and Hingham also have preservation funds. I don't know the amounts of those. I didn't get a chance to look. And this particular one, Arlington, is a 501c3 organization of its own. It's separate from the town. So it's not administered by the town. It has its own independent board, volunteers.
Right, that's exactly what the Coffin School is made up of, which is identical.
Mhm. Well, did the Coffin School apply to did it create its own preservation fund, or did it borrow from a?
So
Well,
I-
Go ahead.
Sorry,
Go ahead, Lori.
I just wanted to clarify. So what Georgia is saying, Tom, is that the loan fund is a nonprofit and then it makes the loans. But what's different about this than what we have on Nantucket and that the Coffin School applied for is that it can be private homes that can apply for the loans. Whereas like the Coffin School had to be a 501c3 to get the,
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's what she was just saying. That's the only reason I made that comment.
Yeah, these are private homes. The only, again, because they were only exterior elements. They did grant money to a museum in Arlington for an internal repair, but that was because it was a public museum and the internal repair was was visible to the public. Otherwise, it would not have been. That's why they limit theirs to publicly visible external repairs to the fabric of the building. I mean, that would be by whatever the organization, whatever the revolving fund decided.
So David and Georgia, now that you've dug into this a little bit, and I also inquired with someone I know who's on the Council for Elder Affairs, and she had a whole bunch of ideas of people that we might talk to assess the need. I mean, is this something you all want to continue to move forward with and engage the commission with?
I think it's interesting. I think there's a potential need. In Arlington, it's not needs related. So it's not a question of, are you poor and elderly and can't afford it? It's just a question of, do you want to repair an historic house? We could make it any way, anything we wanted to. But there's something very appealing about it not being needs related.
You know, that's a really good point. I had never thought that it would be needs related, but I had thought that it would be people who, you know, on Nantucket, we have a lot of people who just don't think anything about writing a $10,000 check, you know, every other week to maintain their home. And not everybody can do that. So I had thought about it with that lens, but I definitely did not imagine that this would be a needs related fund.
I think originally,
by
years
statute.
Ago, when it first occurred to me years and years ago, I was thinking of it as needs related, but it doesn't have to be, and it really increases its appeal if it's not needs related. If it's simply it focuses on the preservation rather than the finances.
I think that's a great point, David.
Yeah, I guess to kind of help answer your question, it's definitely something I think Georgia and I want to keep working on, but I think it's important to have the support of the rest of the commissioners. You know, we've got, you know, preliminarily 250 plus structures in ROH. You know, there's several streets that I went by that just the odd numbers or the even numbers are actually fall in the ROH. So you've got the other sides of those streets, you've got historic structures throughout the NHL. You know, I think that there's dozens, if not, you know, 100 plus properties that would be eligible. And I just wonder if it's something the commission feels is worth our continued time and effort.
Holly, I see you with a hand.
Yes, well, on that note, and this is kind of another reason why we're going through the survey plan, there are structures on this island that are actually, you know, meet the definition of contributing that people don't realize. 50s, 60s, and I see that on a day-to-day basis. Oh yeah, it's just an old building. No, it actually has, you know, obviously that value in contributing status to the overall district, and that's again one of Nantucket's uniqueness. So there's probably a lot more that would qualify under this than what meets the eye right with this conversation.
Yeah.
Just want to put that out there, which is great.
In connection with the important point I thought they made was they needed the buy-in of the planning department, which had to be committed to historic preservation, and other cultural organizations. So I was thinking, talking with the NPT, with the Athenaeum, perhaps with other entities informally to begin with, but getting some feedback from them about how about, you know, widening the public appeal of this idea, so that it would not be seen as either elitist or too narrow, that it would just be seen as something we wanted to do to help the community keep the historic character of the fabric of the buildings.
I think that's a great point, Georgia. I want to share another fund in Providence that just for a minute, just because I really want you guys to see this. I'm just trying to find it on my screen. It's called revolvingfund.org. Let me share my screen. This is can you see this Providence Revolving Loan Fund? So this is a lender focused on housing, historic preservation, equitable neighborhood revitalization, and they've really tied together all of these topics that are of interest to us. So they have, let me just see. They do home repair loans. They offer construction management and consulting as a critical component in preservation. And they also have a salvage shop.
Excellent.
Wow.
Yeah. So I won't, go through, but it's called revolvingfund.org, revolvingfund.org, and it's in Providence. And I thought that was a really cool model that might dovetail with the grant work, the investigation that NPT is doing with salvage. So, well, I think we need to move on because I would like to talk about archaeology before I need to leave in 13 minutes. So is there anybody who would like, I think we should keep working on this. Does anybody have a different opinion or any kind of really good advice for the working group?
I so appreciate the work that's being done. Thank you both. And if you're willing to continue, I think it's could be a valuable resource. And I think, exploring it further to see what the need is and how potentially helpful this could be is definitely worth further research.
I agree completely.
Okay, great. Well, it looks like we have full support. And David and George, I'd love to continue to support and refer some ideas. It might make sense to talk to a bank next, just to have a preliminary discussion, because the bank that is interested in doing this is going to be someone who's already deeply committed and involved with the community and likes the idea of this as sort of a pro bono thing. So that I have some ideas of people we could talk with just to have some, very, very early stage non-committal discussion. So, okay. Research on archaeological preservation plans. So there was a lot of information in the packet. Susan and I collected a lot of information that was, we thought, like very eye-opening about how to do this correctly and what some next steps might be. Did everybody have a chance to look at the RFP and some of the links?
I looked at
Susan, do you want to chime in and summarize a little bit about what we learned from Suwana and what we were thinking we might do next?
Yeah, I'm not so sure that I'm as good as you are at summarizing things, but I tend to go off on my tangents. But it was wonderful talking to Suwana, as well as reading through all of the comments that we got to realize, yes, that many communities have already done this and done it in a way that seems to have been very successful. One of the next things I would like to do is follow through with some of these communities that are mentioned in the documents that we have gotten from other people that you have been able to access, is to follow up with them and see how successful the actual implementation of these projects, how successful they have been at using them. Because it's one thing for us to do these, which are, I think, fascinating documents to have for the town and the general public. But I would also like to know whether their towns have actually, in their planning of development, have they actually been used successfully in a way that we would like to see? Or are they just documents that sit around and nobody really uses? So that's something personally that I'm going to follow up on, because I think it's an important part of it, that when you start on the project, we really would like to know whether the document is actually used by the town and by the different departments that it would be applicable to. So having said that, and I will get back to you all on what I find out when I talk to the individual people in the towns that have been mentioned. I think that in particular, the Sandwich, if Hillary, if you can make that connection. My computer is
You want me to bring that up?
Well, I just would mention it. If you have it right there, it's great. I don't seem, my computer, as I say, I've got it so full of other things right now.
Okay, let me find keep talking. I'll see if I can
Yeah,
find it.
that has a great explanation as to why it is an important project to undertake, and what the benefit would be, which was kind of brought up in an earlier conversation in an earlier meeting, is what good is it to the public? And I just thought that they had I keep trying to move it myself.
Oh, where is it? Home.
I think it's right at the beginning.
Oh, here.
Yeah, just there, this little section right here, I think is a great discussion of why it might be of interest to the town in general, and how it would be useful, as well as just random information, but how it might be useful. And we've talked about the education part of it before, which I think is great. The promotion, I think, is really interesting to get the public involved. So I thought that was a nice kind of introduction to it. When you get further down in Suana's email, she gives these links to really great ongoing studies that have been done in different towns. In particular, I liked Newton, and I think really, I'm trying to think who came after Newton there. There's Suana.
There's Arlington,
Bolton.
Newton, Bolton.
Bolton, I think, has a great, if you're going to read one, that older assessment, I think, is really comprehensive. So it will give you an idea of the overall scope and how it would all come together. And I think once you look at one of these assessments, you'll see how useful that it can be to the town and all the different departments. So overall, I think this is a great way forward for us. And again, I just want to reiterate that this is not just about prehistoric. It is about the contact period, the first development on the island, the first town that was started here, and about all of these wonderful farmsteads and everything else that are spread out already on preserved lands, not lands that are being developed, but these kind of, and a lot of these are already known, but to do an assessment of them, I think, is really important at this point in time for people. So, Hillary? Anything else?
Well, no, that is terrific, Susan. Thank you. So I think what we're thinking is that, archaeology is part of what a historical commission looks after. There is an infrastructure of how to preserve the past that's still in the ground. How we preserve these lands, how we educate the community about it. So we are thinking that we should tap into that process that's well established by professionals in our field. And then in terms of how to think about the benefit, like just building on some of the things Susan said, to think that like the land bank and the NHA the NCF and the NHA, they have all of these areas that have archaeological resources in them. And what if through our, this process, this is going to take years, right? But this process of doing the survey plan, we could identify some sites that would be fantastic to excavate or study for education. We could maybe work with the high school to do that as a program for young people on Nantucket. I think it would be really enriching and has a lot of potential. I also think that, we just don't know what we don't know. So if we don't do the work, we're not going to know, we're not going to be able to talk to and communicate to people about it. And then if we're not, like, if we haven't prepared ourselves with the information, something might come up that is, really a problem, or really something, nobody knows what to do with. Like there's just so much in the ground that if you start excavating and you find something and you haven't prepared your, awareness of how we handle this on Nantucket, then we just really won't know what to say to anybody. So I think investing in this education is going to help us be better stewards and help everyone working on Nantucket be aware and better stewards.
Yes.
Yes, Barbara.
Yeah, when I first started teaching here, Ted Anderson was active in the community then, and he took my students out to Ram Pasture and taught them how to do a whole excavation and with scrapers and he had a site that he wanted us to look at and document. And I think those kids who did that, and this was a long time ago, it was pretty powerful to think that they were actually on a dig. And I think that would be great. I mean, I know Ted doesn't do it anymore, but it was fabulous.
Was it a prehistoric site or a historic site?
It was prehistoric. Yeah.
Is he still on? I don't know Ted Anderson.
Ted was a longstanding minister at the Unitarian Church, but he was an archaeologist in the Middle East before, that. So but no, he's not. He is on Nantucket, but he's not well. And there's a precedent set. So just wanted to mention. Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to connect with all of the people who are knowledgeable in this field and get them connected to this discussion.
I don't know whether he's contactable or not. I haven't talked with him in years, but I can find out.
It would be great to talk to the students.
Yeah.
Yes.
About that.
Probably all be about 65 now.
Would that be my mom's class?
Ask your mom.
Exactly.
Holly.
Yeah.
Hey, everyone, I'm sorry, but I need to turn the chairmanship over to Angus at this point. I really apologize for this. I had cross wires with something that I can't move. And but I hope that Angus and Susan can wrap up the discussion on archaeology. And with the last topic in the work plan and the other business, I would just ask Holly, I copied you or forwarded to you the email exchange I had with Frank about the sewer force main. Could you just tell everybody about that? That should be on the list under other business, just to acquaint folks with the content of that email.
Okay. When would you like me to do that?
Oh,
Later?
just if you have time under other business, if you could just mention that.
So
thank you, everybody. I yield the floor and the chair, whatever I do, I'm yielding it to Angus. And
Thank you, Hillary.
See you later, Hillary.
I hope we can maybe meet in person next time. Maybe you guys could talk about that if that's possible and desirable. Just one last thing. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. So
So-
Angus, maybe to wrap it up for my part, it's just that I think this is, as Hillary said, part of our directive as a commission, and that I think that this way forward to do one of these studies is really the foundation for all of the work in this direction. And with that, we have to get funding, we have to hire, a professional crew. It's not something that can be done by volunteers or in any other way. So it will require funding, and it is quite a bit of work. As Hillary said, it will be probably years in the rather than not just looking at next year, it's going to be years and years forward to get this going. Yes.
Susan, when you say hire professionals, you mean professional fundraising people?
No, it'll have to be
Archaeologists.
someone like PAL that does the
Yeah,
survey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that. And it is really, if you read through that one study in particular, and as I say, there were so many listed by so many different people. I think that one that has kind of been more completed because it's a little bit older is also extremely comprehensive. And you will see, as Barbara was bringing in, that it does involve surveying, local amateur archaeologists and everybody and anybody who might have an interest in any archaeological material, and in all the like the NHA's what am I trying to think of? Their materials that they have. So it's I just think it's wonderful. I hope we can get this going, and I will work my hardest on it to make it happen for you. Yes.
Thank you, Susan. Holly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And first of all, I thought it was great that Hillary sent the email out to the Preservation Listserv. That's a great resource for anybody, especially commissioners. I think I get a bazillion emails from them on a daily basis, and it's nice to see all that kind of conversation. And there are a couple of folks that were in here that answered, for instance, the Deputy State Archaeologist, Ed Bell. I've talked to him before, as well as Sarah Kochev, who is a preservation planner over on the Cape. I've talked to her many times about resiliency aspects of preservation. Obviously, archaeology is very important. I just want to be the person that says, we need a clear understanding if you're doing a recognizance survey is going to either require a bylaw, or two, lead into a bylaw. And I just want to sit here and say that we would need clear direction from town select board members on if is that something that this town wants to move forward with. I'm all for education. I'm all for that. But again, I would be remiss if I didn't bring that up as your staff liaison. That's the biggest thing. There are things in here, specifically the example that was put in the packet, it is a proposed bylaw. So there's one thing on doing a recognizance survey, which would be something that would be eligible for our CLG funding that we've requested before for the surveys. That would be another funding source that we could tap into and apply for. But again, there's one thing on direction and wanting to know what this town wants to move forward with. Recognizance survey that does not dive into a bylaw would be one thing. If the town wants to move forward with a bylaw, that needs to be directed from select board. So Susan, when you move forward in contacting these other communities in Massachusetts, I would definitely want to know that. Does it require a bylaw? Because the example that was provided from Ed Bell does require a bylaw, and that's really, really important.
Perfect. Not a problem.
Thank you for that, Holly. And is this something that is could be a two-step process, or is one dependent on the other? Can we
That's the question. Okay. Yeah, that's the $1 million question from a planning perspective, from a regulatory perspective. there's one thing on, and I asked this because, you know, the recognizance survey that we had back in, gosh, I think 81 is when the state did the overall recognizance survey for architectural and in the overall history of Nantucket. And it hasn't been updated, but obviously is utilized in all aspects of Nantucket history. Was that done, you know, just to do it, or was that done to formulate, you know, what we have ongoing with the historic district? But it does the recognizance survey for archaeology, do they go hand in hand? Obviously, one is going to formulate the other, but can we do just a recognizance survey without moving forward with a bylaw? Again, the $1 million question. Bylaw would require that direction from town.
Thank you. There, reading through the information, it was interesting and encouraging to see such a response to the inquiry of, you know, is this going on and how is this affecting the communities, and especially the North Attleboro work that was done, and to be able to see an overlay in the GIS maps would just be terribly interesting, if for nothing else. But other commissioners, do you have any comments or questions for Barbara? Sorry, not Barbara, Susan.
Susan.
Susan, what would be the next step, do you think, with this? Oh, I think you're muted, Susan.
I'll have to discuss it again with Hillary because she knows more of the technical aspects of getting it started. But I think that maybe it's just, I don't know whether we need to have a vote of whether we want to continue in this, if everyone's interested in continuing this kind of research on this type of a project, or whether it just can be an ongoing, you know, project at this time, just researching what's going on in other communities. As we've said before, it's very interesting that so many communities have been mentioned and we've just started, you know, looking at it. I'm sure there are a lot of others as well that can model for us what could happen. And, you know, I'm not sure, as Holly says, all the technicalities of getting the project actually underway, but in our just beginning research, it looks like it has been done. It has been done successfully. And as I say, my next step is to really see whether there's some sort of result from it for the actual town itself.
Thanks so much, Susan.
Sure.
Can I just take a temperature of the rest of the commission on the interest in continuing to pursue this project?
Pursuing it.
I am also in favor of pursuing this.
Thank you, Tom, David. Thanks, Maggie. Georgia. Barbara, I trust you're in. Yes. Okay, great. Well, let's look forward to just the next steps and we'll figure that out as we go. Let's go ahead and move on to the archival needs in respect to town records. Barbara, can you help us with that? Oh, I think you might be muted.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance. I've been away. I haven't had a chance to go through the things that Hillary sent from WPI, but you know, I think Hillary and I are both very committed and finding more places than we even imagined that have records. You know, civic organizations, all kinds of places. So yeah, I think it's very exciting, and you know, I think that'll be at least a year-long process, if not more, I would guess. So I'm going to stay on that subcommittee if I'm allowed. So Yeah.
Thank you so much. And sorry to see you leaving your formal role, but it's I know everyone appreciates the work that you're doing with the NHA and continuing with this project.
Yeah, I just am so overextended now in the cemetery commission. There's just so much, and I feel like I've got to be fair, and but I do feel quite guilty about it. So sorry.
Does anyone have any comments about that? Were you all able to read the information about those records, Holly?
I was just really happy to see a WPI project that actually did all that work. I think our WPI folks, the students, they've been working with the town, I think maybe about 8 years now. And it's amazing that these different projects that they've been working on. So yeah, I was glad to see that was one of them. Looking forward to it. It was good.
That was extensive. Just looking at their presentations this year, that seemed that there was a lot of work that went into that. All right, well, I guess we could just move on to the other business. Holly,
Mr. Chair, yes. Yeah. So one of the things under other business that Hillary had mentioned before she left was she reached out to the town's consultant, Hazen and Sawyer, who's been working on the sewer force main, just to see where they stand since the contractor was selected. And Frank Ayotte, which I know you all probably remember, the project engineer for the town, he said that the build alternates were accepted under the sewer force main project, and the project has started with the immediate work focused along the South Shore Road area for that part of the force main and the gravity sewer. With the building that you probably all have noticed that's on Surfside, it says the gravity sewer and water main are part of another project separate from the force main, which is the force mains in town. That was also awarded at the same time to the same contractor. So there's the schedule and latest information is on the town's website. Basically, Hillary has just asked that that they have, obviously protocols for handling the irregular curbing and block cobblestone once they get into that part. It sounds like in the fall. From a staff to staff's perspective, I don't know, I've known David my whole life. Another Nantucketer, and as the sewer director, I think he's publicly made comments to this commission, even to the select board, that he will make sure that his consultants and his contractors reach out to first through me and then to you all if need be. And we know that he is very sensitive to our concerns. So
thank you, Holly.
There's that. Yep.
Any comments on that from the rest of the commission? Seeing none, we can go on to the welcome new staff, Patrick Reed, transportation planner.
We have a new, so he has a sporadic, I guess, schedule. So I see him, but not that much. He does a lot of stuff outside because he's not on the island. But I will say it's nice to have a transportation planner for the town. Hillary had mentioned through when we discussed about the agenda that want to send an invite to the commission. What I recommended was having the chairs, you, Angus, and Hillary, to send an email request to the planning director asking if that is something he can do. Have Patrick maybe meet you all in a meeting, kind of have that conversation, meet and greet, if you will. I don't know his schedule. Again, I can only imagine that he's hit the ground running, so to speak, and on a lot of different projects. So that's what I would recommend in having that communication with him in introduction.
Thank you, Holly. How the other commissioners feel about us writing a letter, just welcoming him and offering for him to come and sort of, so we have an opportunity to meet him.
I think idea.
Anyone want to make a motion for that?
I'll make a motion, we send a letter.
Second,
Thank you. Thank you, Georgia. Great, well, we'll do that. So the next thing is any statements about the town meeting that we want to make. Anyone have any comments about that?
Do you and Hillary have anything special that you guys want to bring forth to the commission so that we can talk about it?
Well, didn't we, I'm trying to remember if we, in our last meeting, if we made any motions for making statements from the commission.
Angus, I believe that we did.
Thank you, David. So, you know, we would follow through on that. And then who knows about the NARAB course? I think that is that postponed? Holly, do you know anything about that, or David?
Yeah, I don't have much of an update. I know that Marion Conley was looking for kind of a renewed, some renewed support from the commission moving forward with the class. It wasn't on their spring offering, which is what I believe that we were told previously when we decided to switch from the fall to the spring in hopes of doing it in person. So I think the directive is just going to be to follow up with Marion and see if there's, you know, a possibility to launch the course either over the summer or into the fall. So I assume that everybody on the commission would still be excited and on board for that. And, you know, hopefully we can put it together.
Great, thank you, David. So things are still moving forward. It's just the scheduling of when it would actually happen. Okay,
Right.
Great. Any other comments on that?
On that, one, I can't wait till it happens. But two, just here recently, I spoke to a new property owner of a historic inn downtown. And long story short, she was recommended a contractor to work on her historic structure who doesn't necessarily know the proper procedures and materials and that kind of thing. Obviously, I'm not going to name any names, but what it brought to my attention the light of what this class can do for realtors, and maybe a sidebar is to you know, I don't know how that would work, but making sure that realtors are aware that there are, especially on Nantucket, it's a different world than it is, say, in Framingham or, you know, somewhere else in Massachusetts, that they realize that contractors need to know the proper procedure, the proper shingles, that kind of thing, and not just, you know, have just the average contractor that's not familiar with the rules and regulations and processes. We're working in a historic district. I do think that's important.
Thank you for reminding us of that, Holly. There are, you know, as our building community explodes, there's so much going on, and at a smaller scale, it's so much easier to manage the newcomers about how, you know, what the process is and the materials and all the things that you just brought up. So again, I think this is really helpful. You know, the more education we have, and this is another venue that is important to touch. Susan?
muted.
A former iteration of the commission, I believe that we put together a list, and I don't know if it's ever been updated, and I don't remember how we disseminated it, but a list of kind of, and I don't know whether they were just recommended or whether they had some sort of accreditation that we, you know, referred to, but that we did put this list together of different tradespeople and general contractors that were on the island that would, kind of meet a standard. And I don't know if we've ever addressed that or whether it's not legal to do that, but if that is something that has been done, Holly would know, more of
So
what's available.
they're on that, and I thank you for letting me know, because I'll look to see what I can find from the previous radiation of the commission. I do know that, one, from a state's perspective, Preservation Mass, as the state's nonprofit, has a list of all sorts of consultants, from contractors, that specialize in preservation all the way up. And I also know that Nantucket Preservation Trust has on their page a link from a town, from a jurisdiction's perspective. We cannot recommend people. If people ask us, we have to give a minimum of 3 different, organizations or companies when it comes to surveyors, engineers, contractors, you name it. So it's one of those things that we can't do that from that regards. So I would, in this particular case, I actually said you might want to reach out to Nantucket Preservation Trust. Oh, and here's their website. I know they have a list of people that they've worked for and they worked with and know that what they're capable of. But from a state side, there is a list from Preservation Mass, and at the least, we as a commission could reference their PDF that they have available on their website and put it on our website, or do a link. So I can work with Florencia on that.
So is that something that the individual contractors would have to put their names up for, or how does that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think
So
we all
is
know
that-
that there's
Is that
preservation
something you would have
contractors
to
out there.
tell them about and say, educate all the different contractors and say, if you'd like to be on this list, this list is available and that list is available.
And who validates it?
Well,
Right, and that's
Yeah.
why I referenced Preservation Mass,
Yeah.
because even the state, at the state side, references Preservation Mass as the state's nonprofit, of a list of all those consultants, from anything from Epsilon's type of doing recognizance work to an actual preservation contractor. So I personally think that's the job of the nonprofit, to be the advocate on that side, versus the town. So.
Right.
Thanks, Holly. David, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, this kind of segues with this topic. It also sounds like at the beginning of our meeting, we spoke about the need for giving our historic tax credit applicants kind of a resource list of the different consultants. And I wonder if we could kind of parallel these two projects as, putting together, even for just information gathering, a resource list. We don't necessarily need to publicize it or do anything with it, but I think it would be important to know, certainly from the consultant perspective for the historic tax credits, a list of people that have worked on Nantucket, for instance. And then, maybe we could also do a project that parallels that to talk about different contractors on the island.
Good idea.
Sounds like a good idea. Does
So
anyone
maybe I
have?
can preliminarily put something together and maybe have something for us at the next meeting.
That sounds great, David. Thanks. Any other comments on that? Seeing none. The last thing on the agenda is the coordinating and collaborating with the HDC and the Building with Nantucket in Mind. So Hillary and I have, through the CLG, we've, looked forward to collaboration. And we just haven't had a meeting recently. So we look forward to the next one. But also, we've sent a couple of outreaches to a couple of the HDC board members, Abby and Diane, and haven't heard anything back. Holly, is there any way you could help facilitate some sort of connection for collaboration there?
Yeah, so when Hillary mentioned that this, the partnership with the HGC obviously is important. She had mentioned that you all had sent an email to them. I actually did that on my own, not knowing that you all did that. And I actually haven't heard anything back either. I don't know. I was gonna actually resend my email and say, hey, just checking up. I don't know. I don't have anything other than the MOU aspect for the HDC, for their prerogative, for their involvement. The HDC, for those of you who might not know, the HDC picked or voted on for Diane and Abby to be their reps, if you will, to go through the MOU and make sure that it, HDC's concerns or whatever are included. My understanding is that will be brought back to the HDC for their adoption and approval before we will have a joint CLG meeting over the MOU. What the timetable on that is, obviously I have no idea. You all see the agendas, 4 pages long. We meet over 6 hours a week. A few of you that are on the advisory board, you get it, you see it. Until I think the economy starts going down, are we going to see any change in that from time? But as far as what they've done, I don't know if the two of them have discussed the MOU. So I will reach out to see what's going on and let you know.
I appreciate that, Holly. Tom?
Yeah, with no, this is not directed at Diane or
Abby?
Abby. Yeah, I mean, this has been going on for years, literally, trying to get this building with Nantucket Mine back up to speed. It's just, frustrating and disappointing that it hasn't been done. I think that is one of the major things that this town, a tool that the HDC has to use, and nobody's done a thing about it. It's
Well, to be fair, Tom, through you, Mr. Chair, this was more on the MOU versus the building with Nantucket in mind. I have publicly, made that comment that, yes, the building with Nantucket in mind definitely needs to be what I would call codified, looked into. I've done it on my own, but that bailiwick is definitely with the HDC for them to, to go that. And obviously this commission does have a vested interest in that. And if that's something they want to have, your assistant with, I would hope that they would reach out. I wish I had some more answers on all this. We are the busiest historic district in the country, and I tell people that on a daily basis. People that are on the agenda that are waiting weeks, they're on the agenda, but they're not going to be reviewed. So it's just, it is the nature of the beast. But I do think that everybody understands, and I think would be appreciated moving some of these things forward.
It's ironic that I feel like the tools that would be helpful to the HDC and the support that the NHC could possibly provide for the HDC. I feel like it's a wasted opportunity, and somewhat ironic that, when there's the greatest need, it's being put off because there's such a demand. Yeah, so
much better than I did, Angus, but you're right there.
I hope that we can come together to support each other in preservation on Nantucket. Are there any other comments on this? We've covered a lot today, you guys. Are there any other comments in general?
I move we adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Georgia. I'll go around. Susan?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Clement?
Aye.
David?
Aye.
Barbara?
Aye.
Georgia?
Aye.
Mickey.
Hi.
All right, well, we are adjourned. Holly, thank you so much for your assistance, and thank you all for being here. And
Thank
you,
you
everybody.
for taking
Thank
over.
Thanks, Angus.
Thanks,
we'll see
Holly.
you next time.
Thank you, Holly.
Great weekend.
Take care.